Spectre, welcome back to the session. Just to confirm, you are live on YouTube.
Right, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So the inquiry's resumed. I've in the interval or the gap we've had, I've had a look at Miss Reed's comments, and so I mean the appellant said that it's willing to have these taken on board, so I'll take those on board, but I'm happy for the appellant to provide a response note to those points that have been raised. And as far as I can see, that should then actually conclude that. And so I'll be able to take on board what Ms. Reed says. That's, I'm assuming, on behalf of, I'm not sure whose that is, but it might be Limes Protection or Tenterden Council. But anyway, I'll take on board those Limes Land Protection or comments, as well as the response from the appellant on that. So I feel that that's fairly taken on board those. Any other matters that anyone wishes to bring to my attention before I move on to the section 106? Right. In that case, what I've done, I've had a look at the draft section 106 that was provided the other day, very late. So it's been quite a quick look through. What I'll do, I think I'll go through that section 106, and on the items that I'm a bit concerned about, I'll then ask for some SIL compliance or certainly compliance with the tests from well, more evidence maybe if I need it on the tests to actually justify the contribution or section 106 obligation. So what I'll start with is the actual draft document that I was provided with. I don't know whether there's any other draft or anything else available at the moment, but Mr. Howell Williams.
So there is not as yet a further draft, but even as we were discussing things this morning, there were further tweaks, if I can put it that way, to the text.
Yes.
I don't think, unless Mr. White should say otherwise, that should prevent this session continuing.
No. No, I think one of the reasons for this session is to actually satisfy me that the tests are met on the obligations that are going to be put in. So that's really it. And then it's a matter of then all the agreements being put in place to make sure that that it's actually provided for when necessary. But
yeah, so we're happy for you to guide the discussion to assist you best. If there are outstanding matters, and there may be one or two things that require explanation and perhaps a little bit of updating, then perhaps we should do that after if they've not already been covered by your questions.
Okay then, thank you. That sounds a reasonable way of doing it. So I'd just like to say on this draft, there is I've looked at it, and there is a contents page which seems to be completely at sorts with the rest of the document. Doesn't seem to make any sense at all.
I think I think it's fair to say there's obviously been formatting issues and the speed to get something to you, and obviously Mr. Morgan and Mr. Howell Williams, instructions lister, will obviously make sure the format works in time. But there was a clear urgency to get you the document ASAP.
Oh, no, I can understand that. I just thought I'd bring these matters. I mean, I can understand why there are mistakes and things in it or whatever, but because it is quite rushed, but I'm just sort of trying to point out things that I've picked up anyway. But yeah, I'll go through it anyway. But the contents page certainly needs work doing on it, and then I'm moving through it as I've looked through. Just try and get through it. Right, page. Look through most of
Whilst
the.
you're doing that, sir, can I introduce again Miss Humphreys, who will be assisting you on the 106 on behalf of the local planning authority?
Sorry, who? Sorry,
Miss Humphreys.
Miss Humphreys. Yes, thank you. And so the first comment is, I mean, these might be just formatting, but on 2.3, which is notices and monitoring, Schedule 1, to give the council and the county council notice in writing of, you've got 2.31 date of occupation, 25% of dwellings.
Also, before
2.32 is date of occupation of 50% of the dwellings, because it's not on there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Well, not on my copy anyway.
So sorry, I just wondered, before we deal with the detail, is it worth, in the light of what Mr. Al Williams and I both said at the start this morning, I've got fresh instructions, but I just wonder if it's worth us just clarifying, Mr. Morgan and Ms. Humphreys just clarifying where they've got to as the overarching position, because I think that is important, because it gives you the context of the discussion that will then take place on the detail. But I think there has been some movement that I think it would be assist you to just have the overarching update of where the two parties sit.
Okay then, yep, that's fine. Who's going to give the first update? Mr. Morgan, it looks, I think.
Sir, it's agreed as a matter of principle and substance of the obligations. There is, as you can see, an amount of formatting, tidying, dotting, crossing to do, but that's simply in the nature of the intensity with which we've been successful in converging on an agreed document in the last couple of days.
Right.
What we have agreed, and myself and Ms. Humphreys have agreed, is that it helped us today so that you had something which reflected that measure of in principle agreement and the substance of the obligations. But what is happening in the background within my firm, sir, is the document is being tidied up in all those respects that you would identify as formatting, dotting and crossing. And what we will do is we will be exchanging, myself and Ms. Humphreys, against a clean, updated, kind of prettified, finessed version of the draft, if you like, a comparite to show only what has changed in order to clarify a tidy format, and that nothing that's required to move from this point is actually anything to do with substance or renegotiation of what we've already settled.
Right, okay. In that case, what I'll do, I mean, there's quite a number of little things really. So what I'll do is I'll try and go through the different schedules then and see how they meet the tests then, in that case. Is that fine with Ms. Humphreys as well?
Yes, that's fine. The position is as Mr. Morgan confirmed, subject to checking any details. If any of the definitions we notice don't happen to work, tidying that sort of thing up, and any comments you might bring to light during the session as well.
Right, so I'll move on to, well, really first schedule really is the adult social care contribution then.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really Kent County Council, is that right?
Correct.
And Kent, is there anyone from Kent County Council available? No.
No,
But
they've
I've got,
submitted the statement.
yeah, I've got the, yeah, I've got their statement. Adult social care, social services. I mean, is this a I mean, this is a standard contribution, it seems, isn't it?
Correct.
That's normally requested by Kent County Council. Is that the case?
Correct. Yes.
So it might at this point just be useful to pick up on the query that you had earlier about the nature of the document being on its face an agreement and also an undertaking.
Yes.
So
Oh, yeah.
it's an agreement insofar as it's being entered into bilaterally, has been negotiated with the local planning authority, but with the endorsement of Kent County Council in respect of the subject matter of the contributions per its SPD menu.
Yes.
And KCC not being a party signatory to the document means that it is the recipient of the benefit of the obligations as they flow through the local planning authority receiving them. So the LPA will receive and be the custodian of the monies, and then in accordance with the covenants in the respective schedules for each of the relevant KCC related contributions, the local planning authority will then be under a duty to pass those monies to KCC for the expenditure purpose with an appropriate clawback for the period with which it is to be held. And that's the case for each of the KCC type contributions.
That's correct.
Right. So really, I mean, in terms of, so I'm assuming that this is all, I mean, these contributions, the appellant isn't disputing the fact that so the appellant's satisfied basically that they're all justified in terms of the tests. Is that right, Mr. Morgan?
As it can be, yes, sir, presented with this as the menu of what the authorities are seeking, but of course subject to your rigour in relation to Regulation 122 as to how the requests for the payments have actually been substantiated by the Reg 122 compliance statement.
Right.
Again, so it's I know that it's an exercise that you'll have to go through anyway, but for your note, it's worth marking clause 2.6 of the agreement, where both parties in the usual way have agreed the effect of your blue pencil test, sir, so that which of the obligations come alive and are enforceable are only those that you find are compliant in your
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I've had that. So really, I'm still looking at the compliance with the tests really for these. Now I noticed that certainly when we're going through them, that the SIL, what the council has provided, the SIL compliance statement, leaves it up to the Kent County Council to justify its own money that it's requiring, really, isn't it? Is that the case? So you haven't actually, as a local planning authority, justified him as such yourself. So you're relying on the Kent County Council.
That's correct.
So we've got adult social care, which is down here. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, this is related to the number of dwellings, and then it's going to be spent on. I'm just trying to see what it's going to be spent on towards extra care accommodation within the borough. So I'm assuming that would be related to the development. Is that normal?
I would need to check this, and obviously I don't want to give you misleading information, so I can confirm this with you later after speaking with the Kent County Council. But I think they usually say that if there's not something specific in the area, but which people in the area would use within the borough. So they would have to go somewhere else for this adult social care. But
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that wouldn't necessarily be related to the development, because they might have to anyway, but it's a more vague relationship, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think it's just because they can't be specific to Tenterden.
But this is a general. So what document actually justifies a contribution of 146.14688 per dwelling? How is that? Trying to work out how that's arrived at. Got this social care. So you've got social care, which is Appendix 3 of the Kent document.
Yes.
This is, well, it says 145 households. It's going to be 141 maximum, isn't it? But anyway, it doesn't matter about that because it's per household.
Yes.
So it would just be related to the household numbers that are actually going to be taking place. But yeah. I can't quite see where that 146.88 come about.
I think it's in the table right at the end is actually the very last page of the seal compliance statement.
Of which, of the Kent County Council version?
Yeah, because the Kent County Council statement is appended to the end of our seal compliance statement. It just so happens to be the very last page of that.
I've got.
And there's a table.
Some appendices, community. Oh, right. Yes, I've got.
So it may help.
I mean, there is a table, but it doesn't seem to expand on that. I can't see in the. Anyway, sorry, if you can help, Mr. Morgan. Then.
There is a letter, sir, which is Kent County Council addressed. If you're not looking at, if the content of the letter is simply transposed into the table at the end of the seal compliance statement, it may not be able to help you any further. But there is a letter dated the 24th of May 2021 for the.
Yes, I've got that.
Davis. Yeah. That is all. That's all I can help you with because that is where the sums are derived.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it. In proportion.
Would you like?
I mean, it just says like, as set out in Appendix 2 towards special 14688 per household. And that's as far as it goes.
Would you like me to confirm with them?
Sorry?
Would you like me to confirm with them where this calculation came from?
I think it's going to be useful because it needs to be justified, that amount, really.
Yeah.
I don't know where that's coming from. I mean, I could see, I'm assuming it is a standard amount, but I haven't got any document that actually says this is the amount that you'd expect from, right.
That's fair.
Right. So I think that's the main thing. I think that there's going to be, I'm assuming that this is going to have some impact on social care, this development, and that there might well be a need because of the situation as it is with social care, but I'm not sure how that money's been arrived at. And it does say on social and also, so there's that, and also what it's going to be used for specifically. I mean, is it going to be actually, I mean, I think the section 106 is actually saying that if it isn't spent, then it's going to be brought back. So if it's not actually used for that, then you'll have the money back again. But
yes, it'll be
certainly I need to know how that's arrived at in more detail, really.
Would you like me to send a follow-up email with confirming the borough point rather than the specificity of Tenterden, and also where the calculations for the figures come from?
Yeah, how the amount of money is arrived at, and how it's going to be used, really. A bit more detail on what it's going to be used for, and certainly this clause that's in the section 106 suggests that if it's not used, then it's
returned to the
expiration of 10 years.
Yeah.
Etc. So that does take into account the fact that it's still got to be used for those purposes.
Yeah.
And nothing else. Right. So I'll move on from that then, because I can't see that that's going to be of any use, because I haven't got anyone from Kent at the moment. But if you can go back to them about that. I mean, the affordable housing, I think, is fairly straightforward as long as that's agreed. So I think that it's based on affordable housing anyway, half of it. So it's an important part of the development. So I've got Councillor Crawford has got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, sir. First of all, I'd just like to say I did actually circulate the section 106 to all the councillors in Tenterden Town Council, and so the comments I'll be making will be based on the feedback in the short period that we've had. When it relates to affordable homes, if we look at main paragraph 2.8 on page 20, it refers to 1/3 of being affordable rent units and 2/3 being shared ownership units.
Sorry, I'll just get that.
If you let me know when you found that, sir.
2.8, 50%.
2.8 on page 20. Yep.
Yes, I've got that.
It says 1/3 being affordable rent units and 2/3 being shared ownership units.
Yeah.
But based on the council's experience, this should actually be the other way around. And it should be actually, there's a greater need for rented units than there are for shared ownership units. So we would actually request that those two portions are swapped.
Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, sure.
Understand that point, but that keeps it in line with the policy requirement.
Which policy requirement is that?
With the proportion that should be shared ownership to affordable rent units.
Yeah, so but whose policy?
Is that in policy HOU 1, is it?
Right, so we're talking about Ashley's policy, yeah.
Yes, well, Ashley's policy, and I've confirmed it with my affordable housing.
Yeah, I'd take your word for it. It says that in the policy, but experience has shown otherwise for Tenterden. It may be true for Ashford, but for Tenterden, our need is for affordable rent units. There's no point developing like that because it's not going to solve a problem. We either create section 106 to solve a problem or not, in our view, and therefore that's why I respectfully request that it swaps the other way around. Right.
Okay. I'll make a note of that, but okay. I'm not sure whether that will make any alterations to it. But anyway,
well, as long as you understand where we're coming from, that's the important thing.
Yeah. Oh no, I can see that. Now just move on to the. So really, affordable housing. I mean, I don't think there's any dispute that it should provide affordable housing, and that should be actually made secured by the obligation.
Yeah. But so could I ask a question of Miss Humphreys, please, on...
Sorry, I don't know. I mean, the idea is for me
Okay.
I don't really want to across this because I want to try and make it efficient and,
okay,
and
no, understood.
be able to cover what I need.
Okay, if I can... Okay, if I can just make another comment to the council, which is on paragraph 3.1.2, it says 80% of rental there. I mean, we just feel that's not really affordable. It's really just a discount. Now, again, this may be referring to an ALP policy, and I've got no idea, but that's again council's view.
So 3.8.
3.1.2.
Yeah, again, that's policy.
That's policy. That's the reason why I wanted to ask the question. So okay, I've said my piece.
Yeah.
So I just say from the applicant's perspective, any questions that could be answered by reading the council's own policies by reference to the drafting of the section 106, if we could ask that those aren't posed as questions.
Well, yeah, I think the problem is that maybe that Councillor Crawford doesn't realise that this is the situation. But anyway.
If I adopted the wrong policy, I apologise.
Right. So, but I mean, like I say, when we resume on Friday, I'm going to want to tidy a lot of these things up anyway. So there might be a case to come back on anything that's been raised at this session, just to clarify it, which includes probably from Kent County Council as well. So we might have to come back to this before we conclude the inquiry. But the next one is allotments. Now this allotment one, which is now there's no dispute. I mean, I'm assuming there's no one disputed the fact that there might be need for allotments. So in terms of how would this be used then, this allotment money, and how is it calculated? Because this isn't a county council one, is it? This is a local council.
Yes, that's an Ashford contribution. Sorry, if I just get up the I'm just trying to find the relevant part in the seal compliance statement.
I've got the summary, and then I
believe the calculations are in the public green spaces and water environment SPD.
Oh, it's in the SPD, is it? Right.
Yeah.
So that's a standard.
A standard. Yeah.
Right. I'll just have because there is another, because in the actual more detailed, we've got allotments. So we've got to accord with these policies. So you've got COM3 allotments on. And then you've got the public green space. So this says 0.2 hectares per 1,000 population. And so based on that, then that's how the calculation's been provided, because it's not actually providing allotments, is it? This.
No, I think that means if there's if that's provided in developable area, then that's when the allotment provision comes in, the calculation comes in that needs to be provided. Yeah,
so this money is going to go towards allotments, isn't it? This money,
yes,
250. But what allotments is it going to go towards? Where are they?
Well, at the moment it just says within Tenterden.
So it says within Tenterden, does it?
Yeah. Yes, Schedule 3.
Right. And these within Tenterden, are they existing or improvements to existing or extra ones or what? How's it?
I think they were existing, but I just need to.
So how is it used?
My
then?
instructing officer for that.
Right. Oh, I've got Mr. Mayett anyway.
Oh, there we go.
Mr. Mayett.
Good morning, sir. Thank you. Excuse me. The general principle is if allotments are to be provided, sorry, if there's a development that triggers the need for development for allotment facilities to be delivered, they can either be as an on-site allotment facility within the development, or if that's not right, appropriate, etc., they can be for off-site improvements to either existing allotments or to, if necessary, create new ones, a contribution towards creating new allotments.
Yeah.
It is within the town council's responsibility for delivering allotments within a town and parish area, not the borough council. So this is a fund that would go to the town council to either improve and enhance their existing allotments in the town, or if it's a question of new allotments needed because there aren't enough, this could be a contribution to those new ones.
Right, I've got Councillor John Crawford who's got his hand up, so I don't know whether you can help.
Yes, thank you. Yes, from our point of view, and that is that if it's possible, we would like to see the allotments actually constructed on the site, the Waite site, and not a financial contribution. That's our preference. But
do you have any idea of what money would be? Because it sounds to me that the money would come to you as a council. I mean, not you personally, but to the actual town council to determine where the allotments would be.
Yeah, but there is a registered. We do have a registered waiting list for allotment sites. I couldn't give you the number because I don't actually have that at hand. Yeah. But certainly a new allotment site would be welcome. But our view is, instead of actually trying to hunt around for a suitable site, which we have been looking for some years, it would kill two birds with one stone and actually put it onto the Waite site. The land's there, build it on it.
So if the money, I mean, I know I don't know what capacity you're here as. Is it Tenterden Council?
Well, yes, Tenterden Council, but I'm talking as far as the feedback I've had from the councillors. So I've as I said earlier,
but you're really
I'm not speaking for myself.
Town council, aren't you?
Yes, really? That's right.
Yeah. So in terms of that you could be given a lot of money for allotments.
Well, we would. I mean,
where would that go?
We would have to go and find a site. But to my knowledge, there isn't an identified site to purchase at this point in time. But what I can tell you is there is a need for allotment sites.
I'm not saying there isn't a need. What I'm saying is, can that need be satisfied by the money that will be provided?
I can't remember the sum of money that's. Can someone remind me where was the sum of money there?
It's down in the
what page is that?
£258 per dwelling for capital costs and £66 per dwelling for maintenance. So there we are.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that would be a very tidy sum, but yeah. I can't answer your question. Could we find a site for that sum of money? Because I'll be just guessing, and I wouldn't want to.
But it would have to be.
I wouldn't want to guess.
No, that's fine. Anyway, I'll leave it at that then, and we'll see it. Because is there anything else anyone wants to say on allotments? No.
Only that, of course, we're only scrutinising the validity of what is the planning obligation, which is the request to make a contribution towards the provision of allotments within an existing or prospective. What we're not being asked to consider is something which would actually be a different scheme. It's not the job of the 106 to obviously change the scheme, sir.
Oh yes. I'm not saying that you should have to put them on site. I'm just saying that if it isn't on site, whether it would be directly related to the scheme, and and whether it would actually provide what's necessary to mitigate the concerns about allotments, really. That's what
Understood.
So it's
Understood.
actually whether it's actually providing what it says it's going to provide. But anyway, but it looks to me as though there again, if it's not used, is that the case on this?
Yes, that provision is for all of the monetary contributions.
Right, and then we're looking next at community learning contribution. So I think is that.
It's a Kent County Council one. Yep.
That's correct. So community learning.
So that one, like you say, is the county council. So that again might need. So this is. I've got their county council's thing on it. Community learning. So it's new facilities. So it actually says what it's going to be used for, towards new equipment and resources at Tenterden and Ashford adult education centres. And just try and see how that's arrived at. Yeah, I mean, again, I think if you go to Kent County Council, I don't understand where that 1642 comes from per dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's.
Yeah, I'll check that calculation as well.
Councillor Crawford.
Thanks, sir. Again, the view is that since it's for the community, we would like it all 100% to go to Tenterden. That's my only comment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know whether that's included in where it's going to be used, but
at the moment it says for Tenterden and Ashford.
In the yes, it says Tenterden and Ashford adult, but it might be that Tenterden and Ashford adult education centres. Oh, it's both of them. No, it should really be more Tenterden. I would say.
We would like it Tenterden centric, sir.
Yeah, I would have thought so, because it's more likely to be impacting Tenterden than Ashford, isn't it?
Exactly right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll ask KCC to confirm.
Right, the next one, go on to. So healthcare. Now that one's to do with the. Let's have a look where that comes from. Healthcare. So this is requested by the NHS, is it? The healthcare.
Yes.
And so Ashford Rural PCN. So is this something the NHS can calculate? How is it calculated?
have to know what the occupancy rate will be, which we can't know until we know the sizes of the houses.
Oh no, but it's multiplied by £360.
Yeah.
So where does £360 come from?
Yeah, I'll check with them. Again, it's one I will see, but yes, I need to. It's standard, but I need to see. Yeah. There
may be a document or something that justifies that.
So it helps. I'm told that core document 4.10 is the NHS request.
It is, but it doesn't confirm where the 360 comes from, though.
Okay.
Right. So I think we need to confirm. I mean, because these have to be proportionate and actually justify the amount, isn't it, really? And also, again, it's where it's spent, but it seems on that it will say towards provision of towards refurbishment, reconfiguration and or extension of primary care premises. Right. Okay. Councillor, you wish to say something?
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, I can't remember, it was in submissions, and that is that Ivy Court surgery is under a lot of stress financially and everything else. And we recognise that it says Ashford Rural PCN, but within the rural PCN it refers to 4 different surgeries, and Ivy Court is one of them. So we'd very much like this sentence changed to say Ivy Court surgery within Ashford Rural PCN.
Right. Well, that is, I mean, because I think the rural area is quite a wide area, isn't it?
It is very wide, sir, yes.
So it might not relate specifically to this development if it's not.
So people who buy houses here would be going to Ivy Court. And therefore, Ivy Court needs to be funded accordingly to support those extra patients.
Right. Can you look into that then?
In their request statement, they have said the development falls within the boundaries of Ivy Court surgery and that there's limited capacity to accommodate growth in the area. So the need from that development, along with other developments, will be met through the creation of additional capacity in general practice premises. And they said they can't specify specific projects at the moment. Based on the current practice boundaries, they expect the contributions to be utilised as above, and that's why they've mentioned the other areas for spending.
As a matter of fact, I'm told that the Ivy Court surgery has just been rebuilt, and that's one point. But another point is that the funding remit of the trust that has responsibility over a number of facilities within the rural area is a wider consideration than just a pot of money, perhaps for each one. It may not be as straightforward as a ring-fence pot of funding. There probably is a wider consideration for budget. But I just note that that may be the case, but specifically Ivy Court, I'm told, has just been rebuilt.
Right.
I mean, I can confirm Ivy Court was rebuilt, and I think it came on stream a year, 2 years ago. But the issue is not the building; it's the issue is resources, and that's what needs to be funded.
Right. Okay. I mean, the argument is the resources are funded through the tax, but
well, yes, but also yes, it is, but also Section 106 is there to actually help with those resources, is my understanding. I mean, please, if I'm wrong, I'll take it back.
I don't want to take any time disagreeing with that analysis of what 106 is doing, sir, but I wouldn't put it quite like that. But perhaps if we move on.
Right, I'll move on to libraries then. And so libraries is dealt with. Just trying to find where on libraries. Libraries. So it says certain amount per dwelling again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from Kent County Council again.
Correct. It'll go in my overall email to them.
Yeah, I think that needs again. And it says in here, so it says specifically Tenterden Library, so
Yeah.
that's not a problem. It's really how that sum is calculated again, I think. What document do they use and how it's been arrived at?
I knew those documents do exist, but obviously I'll need to get those to you.
Right, thank you. I don't think we can get any further on that. And the community living again. Oh no, community. Sorry, don't. I'll just go on to the next one in the getting muddled up now on the public art contribution next. I think that's the one. Now I don't understand this one. How is this necessary? How does this meet the requirements of the to make it necessary for? Where is it? Just trying to see where it comes in now. Public art contribution. I think this is also, there's not only a public art contribution, there's another contribution. And this is all going to St Mildred's Church project. But
so it's the voluntary sector contribution, which is some schedules for further schedules down.
Yes.
But yes, they're both aimed at St Mildred's.
So this is, I mean, I can see that there might be a need, but
Yes, I understand there's an art arm and a voluntary arm there.
Public art. It says in accordance with the usual practice of the council, a payment of. I mean, where does it say the usual practice, a payment of £338 per dwelling towards that project? How is that a usual practice?
I've just been told we're getting more information for you on this.
And then the voluntary sector one as well, isn't it? That's run by.
That's run by the church as well.
By the church, yeah. So I mean, these are a bit of a contribution to the community, I suppose, aren't they? But it's how is that? I mean, it's 87 per dwelling for the voluntary sector.
Yeah.
But then the public art is as much as 338.
Yes, I think that's because that then includes equipment.
Oh, right. I don't. Yeah.
So I think it's right from the definition of what the expenditure purpose is for the project, that when references to equipment are made, we're basically talking theatrical or community performance activities, staging, lighting, sound box office, front and back and house systems, which sounds like more theatrical / presentation activities.
It does, I mean, from the definitions here, project means St Mildred's Church project directed to fund the arts and cultural capital equipment costs. So what space is that? Is that actually in the church, or? I've got two people coming up now. So Mr. Mayett, maybe he may be able to help.
Excuse me. Mr. Crawford may know more than myself as the local.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I mean, St Mildred's have been reviewing the use of the space within the church to make a greater contribution to the community for a number of different types of events, that including the arts as well. So they do actually have a rolling programme. One of the constraints you won't be surprised about is funding. So any money that would go towards them to actually help create these type of facilities for the general public would be well spent.
Right. Okay. I mean, there's probably no argument that it's not local and it might be used by the extra households, but I'm not sure how it's directly meets the test. Mr. Morgan, you're shaking your head.
Well, no, I'm shaking my head in agreement that there is no reason that it isn't local, but there is clearly an expenditure opportunity or a cost opportunity related to a local facility. We make no submission about the principle there. Obviously, its views are based on the evidence of whether or not necessity in the context of an obligation to make the development acceptable in planning terms is made out.
Hmm. Right. And I think I'm not even sure how that's arrived at, the amount of money. That's the other thing.
So there is I've just been given an electronic nudge. There is a core document at 3.22c, which is justification in the context of the previous application scheme for the same request. So that might help illustrate how it's been arrived at in terms of the capital, or the per dwelling multiplier, rather.
3.22c. So right. So we've got cultural services. I've got quite a few documents there. So it's,
I think it's the one dated 29th of June. Or is that 17th?
So the 3.22, I've got quite a few documents on here. So yeah, 29th of June, is that the one?
Yes, but then when you click on it, it says notes from the 17th of June, so it's a bit confusing, but it's the one that's called 29th on that list.
Arts and voluntary sector. Regarding these requests, please see them. Yes, it says a bit more about it. I don't know whether it actually says how the money's been calculated.
If I can add, sir, I think that is the point that needs addressing really, which is where this calculation comes from, where it stems from, which I've asked colleagues in the team to describe that, and we'll send that information through to you as soon as we get that back from colleagues within the council.
Okay, thank you. So I'll move on then. So the next one is strategic parks contribution. So I don't know who's the best sorry, Councillor Crawford, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't want to interject for the other witnesses. Yes, basically, it is the other side of the borough. It's a long distance. It's very unlikely that Tenterden community would use. So we feel that the contributions should go to strategic parks on this side of the borough. And I think Ashford would probably be in the best position to identify which parts they are. But certainly we would.
So it's either a contribution towards provision of Conningbrook Lakes Country Park or towards provision of Discovery Park.
Yeah, that's right.
And you don't think either of those are
likely to be used by the Tenterden community. So we'd be looking for Ashford to make suggestions which is closer to home.
Right.
So can I make a point about the principle, which Councillor Crawford's comments just raised, therefore. The strategic parks contribution is derived from an SPD. It's payable pursuant to the SPD as a strategic matter because the local planning authority didn't accept that the countryside open space provision, which is part of the scheme, classified as a strategic park provision in order to meet that need, if you like, therefore negating the requirement to make the contribution under the SPD. It is not therefore an amount of money which is really able to find another home, because the SPD specifically identifies these strategic parks. There must be a strategic park, and these are those.
Right. Okay. Well, you're telling me things that I'm not aware of about the SPD, so I'll obviously go by what you say. I'm just the point I was just trying to make.
Yeah.
That is,
no, I can. Yeah, I'm fine on that, on the point you've made, and I've taken on board Mr. Morgan's comments. So it's now Mr. Mayett. You've got a.
Thank you. Understanding Tenterden's view on sort of locality of strategic parks and who's likely to use them, as well as the SPD, there's also the council's open space strategy, which is one of the core documents which does describe what a strategic park is. And Conningbrook and Discovery Park are the two main key strategic parks that we have, and we're in the process of developing and delivering, which is where we see it is either or of those, either one of those two facilities that would be the beneficiary of the strategic park contribution. There isn't a strategic park within the Tenterden area, and as was just said, the proposed park, countryside open space that goes with the development doesn't meet the criteria of the council's open space strategy for a strategic park. It's not of the same scale or magnitude. For example, Conningbrook Lakes has a lake, and the overall countryside park there is about 31 acres, about 14 hectares in size. So it is something of quite a considerable scale, and will be a destination for people of the whole borough to attend, not just sort of the local residents, but it will be a borough-wide destination for people to visit.
Right. Okay. Right. Anything else on that? No. All right. Thank you. Go on to the next one, which is, I've got we've done the voluntary sector contribution, which has been tied up with. So we've got the youth services contribution.
That's the Kent County Council one as well.
Yeah, that one's Kent. Yes, I realise that. Yeah. Kent County Council, youth services. So we're looking at, again, I'm just trying to get it right. £65.50 per dwelling. Youth services in Ashford Borough. So it says additional resources for youth services in Ashford Borough. That's fairly.
Again, yeah. I will confirm with Kent County Council, but I believe when they, put it more generally like that, it's because there isn't a particular service in the town, so people in that town would use the service elsewhere. But I will confirm on that point.
And in terms of the amount as well.
Yes, I'll also find where that's
£65.50 per dwelling. Yeah, because I mean, our Kent County Council have put in something, but it doesn't seem very thorough. Youth service, it's just given a calculation, but it's actually saying current. This might have been actually used. This might actually have worked it out. It says centre and hub-based services, outreach, current youth participation. New youth participation in this group. Will service capacity be exceeded? Yes. Yeah, I mean it's I think these actually say that the service will be exceeded, as in the community done, but it doesn't say how they've managed to arrive at that particular amount. That's the thing.
Yeah, I'll confirm that as well.
So all of those community learning, youth service, libraries, it's arrived at. It said that services will be exceeded, and it's shown that. But the amounts are the problem, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
And also where it's going to go, really. Right. So then this caveat payment.
So can I just raise points?
Yes.
Yeah. I did, unless I've got an out-of-date document. Did we accidentally skip over Schedule 9, which was voluntary sector contribution?
No, we didn't, because I've included that under St Mildred's Church. Because we did the public art contribution and the.
Yes. Oh, so you've merged. Oh, so are you saying you've merged both those schedules together?
Well, no, I'm just saying that they're two that need to be looked at.
Oh, I see. Because because if
they're both going to, there's the public art contribution, and then there's the voluntary sector, which is run by Mildred's Church.
Right. If I could just make comments on that, and that is that certainly, St Mildred's is very good entity, for lots of things, but also I just wanted to point out that Tenterden Hub is also a very good social organisation, and it does cross our minds whether somehow it should be split between St Mildred's and Tenterden Hub instead of just going to one location. So that was on 9, voluntary sector contribution.
Yeah.
And then going forward to Schedule 10, which is the youth services contribution, as you probably would predict, that I'll be requesting that was aimed at Tenterden and not just broader Ashford. Thank you.
It needs to be looked at, I think. Any comments?
So can I make a short point about this idea of splitting on the voluntary sector? Clearly, once you've identified with the benefit of the explanation where the money has been, how it's been calculated, that works back from a particular capital programme of expenditure, which will therefore inherently have nothing to do with the Tenterden hub.
I would have to go by what you say, because you're obviously aware of things that I'm not aware of.
And also just a point on the youth services about that possibly going elsewhere. Well, it can only go to a service that Kent County Council runs.
Okay, thank you. So what I'll do next, I'll move on to the CAVAT payment. Now this is one that's been identified in the tree mitigation, really, isn't it? And I think there was a calculation of how it was worked out. So I can see funding of additional tree planting within the vicinity of the site to be agreed with the County Council based on the CAVAT value of the loss of the existing highway tree. I mean, I'm assuming that that means that the trees will be planted locally, so it would meet the requirements. I think that's probably sufficient, isn't it? There, and
Yeah,
then
vicinity of the site.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that one's probably.
So can I just make a comment again? I've got no idea how much money would be spent on the tree planting around the site on that particular highway, but could I make a request that if there's any surplus funds after that planting, you know, even if it's only just a few £1,000s, if it could be directed towards Tent 1A, which is a southern extension, because there is a lack of trees there.
I mean, I think in terms of that it's more got to be directly related to what the this development itself probably, which is going to be to replace or certainly mitigate the loss.
Okay, I'll be guided by your view, sir. Okay.
So that's how it's been calculated. So it would have to be more directly in terms of the development that would be taking place should I allow this appeal. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So okay. So the next one is countryside open space. So this is the management of it, really.
So I think we're our next port of call in terms of schedules is traffic signals.
Oh, sorry, I missed the traffic.
Before we get into our trio of...
Yeah, I've somehow hit that. Yes, it was. Yes, you're right. Yeah, 12 traffic signals. I think this one's not, well, I don't think this is controversial because I think it's something that's been identified as necessary in the traffic survey, and it's going to be, so I can't see there's any dispute on that one. But anyway, thanks. Is there anything that anyone would like to say on that one? No, yes, but thanks for bringing that to my attention because I did miss it. So the next one is countryside open space. And this is the management, isn't it? The whole thing of that.
Yes.
And has this been sorted? Because this was one of the reasons why we had a a lot of discussion, really, wasn't it?
So there's a lot that's common to how we have overcome the issue to the next two schedules that follow. Specifically, the countryside open space and the sports facilities share a lot of common drafting that deals with the mechanism that we've agreed with the authority, controls, delivery, ownership, management, use, maintenance in perpetuity, and all those by reference to suitable and now agreed restrictions relative to the outline residential part of the application scheme. I think there's a way of sort of précising how in those kind of terms, but obviously we've been very happy to go through each part of this so you can see how each element is addressed, if necessary.
Well, I'm
it may be a cold towel exercise, though, sir.
I think this has been agreed, has it, with the council?
Yes, this is the last thing to be agreed.
I don't think I need to go through it all, because this was a dispute before about the way it was going to be done. So this has been agreed, albeit that there might be some closing statements about concerns to it, but it sounds to me as though there's some agreement now that's been brought in. Is that right? Yes.
It's as agreed as it can be. So as an exercise in drafting for what both parties accept as the planning obligation for each of these items. So that is true for countryside open space, for open space, which is related to the residential, so the in-residential open space, if you like, and then the sports facilities. They're all agreed. The same point still applies about dotting and crossing, sir, but
yes,
Ms. Humphreys, that we will pick that up offline because it's pure drafting.
Right. So really so they're the main areas that have been, because I don't really want to go into any great detail on that, as long as there's something that's there. And I don't think there's much dispute about the fact that they're needed. They need to be managed and something done about the actual operation and everything else. So all of those, I won't go in any great detail on those. And the same with the sports facilities. This is the management side. And so we go through all of that. And then let's go on to the next. And then, I'll move on to the service plots afterwards. But I've got Mr. Howell Williams, who's got his hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. It was only in relation to the schedules to which Mr. Morgan was referring, countryside open space, and the sports facilities. I can confirm now on instructions that the mechanism that has been agreed in substance here, subject only to tweaking as has been explained and tidying up, has served to resolve the concerns in reason for refusals numbers 6 and 9, and that should be and can be recorded. But you are quite right that doesn't mean to say that there isn't a need first to explain the position to you and how that's been done, even at this late stage. And secondly, the implications of what has been agreed, since there is likely to be some comment made, certainly from our part, in relation to what follows in terms of delivery in particular. So I would be quite keen that Ms. Humphreys should explain in broad terms the mechanisms which, as Mr. Morgan has said, carry across in principle. I refer to them for my own part to help me as a sort of two-stage process. Would that be of assistance to you? So rather than to sort of pass over them on the basis that they're agreed.
Right. Okay. Because it's covered. It covers the whole of all the open space, including sports facilities, doesn't it? The mechanism. But before I go on to that, then, if that can be explained, I'll just ask Councillor Crawford. He's got his hand up.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yes. We are disappointed that there isn't a mechanism for funding for perpetuity. I know perpetuity is forever, but what worries us, and that is when that pot of money runs dry and there isn't a single penny left in the pots, how are these services going to be maintained? Who's going to pay for it? And that is a big unknown. And I feel that without that clarification, that puts an enormous liability on the community, whether the community be Tenterden, Ashford or anyone else. So I do express grave concern on that. And secondly, unless I've missed it, I couldn't find any maintenance for the suds. And perhaps that will be covered later on, but that is again.
I think they're covered under the condition.
The maintenance of it. Oh, fine. In that case,
but I don't know whether that means that you've still got someone to maintain them. But perhaps Mr. Morgan will.
So I can help with that. The SUDs form part of the attenuation that's surface water drainage in relation to the residential scheme, and as such, it forms part of the managed estate, which is to be the maintenance of which is to be financed in perpetuity through a service charge levied against the dwellings secured by deed of covenant through transfer of the relevant plots. So it will be funded. There is not just a commitment to undertake, there is also a mechanism to fund.
Okay, well,
right, thank you. So if someone can talk me through then the way these open spaces are going to be
Yep,
operated.
I can do that, sir.
Yeah.
So very broadly, so you understand how this works. We've now agreed the owner is not permitted to commence development on the outline application land, so the residential element, until the obligations under paragraphs 2.2 to 2.9 in both the countryside open space and the sports facilities schedules have been complied with. So what that means in terms of those requirements is that the owner has to submit and have approved by the council, firstly, the constitutional documentation for the management company, details of the selection process, timescales for that process, the scheme, the details of the rights for the management company. They then also have to lay out and provide the sports facilities, and in that definition that includes the pitches, the pavilion and the car park. And again, that's the same for laying out and providing the countryside open space in accordance with the scheme. We have a mechanism in both of those where an appointed professional has to be brought on and agreed by the council and paid for by the owner, so that the payment for that appointed professional doesn't come to the council. And this appointed professional reports to the management company. And what they do is, once the owner says that they have laid out and provided the sports facilities in accordance with the scheme, they will check that that's actually been done. And if it has, then the appointed professional then provides what's called a provisional certificate, which means the owner is then permitted to commence development on the outline application land, but up to a restriction of 25% of the dwellings. So for if it's 141 dwellings that come forward, that would mean they're restricted to occupying up to 35 houses.
Yeah.
The second part of this is we will have the bedding in period of the sports pitches in particular. As I understand, they take 12 to 18 months to bed in. So once that has occurred, we'll then have the owner being able to apply for the final certificate from the appointed professional. And in this time, for at least 12 months under this mechanism, they have to manage and maintain the pitches, the open side country space. And if the appointed professional says that's all being done satisfactorily, then they will issue what's called the final certificate. And when they issue that, the owner has to transfer the countryside open space and the sports pitches, and at the same time as transferring those over to the management company, they also have to pay the maintenance sums for that as well. So it's quite a long process, but it does deal with the bedding in period.
Mm-hmm. Right, and the maintenance is for 10 years, is it, the payment?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right, is there anything else anyone wants to say on that? Mr. Howell-Williams. Mr. Howell-Williams, you got your hand up.
I beg your pardon, sir. It may have occurred to you, having heard that helpful overview, that with reference to what Ms. Humphreys called a long process, that there are implications which I do feel that you might want further help on in terms of delivery, including the delivery of housing and associated benefits, which are, of course, put forward to be taken into the balance. I know that Mrs. Goodyear is here, and I suspect that she will wish to make short comments in relation to that matter, if it would help you at this stage, sir.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the time, and I'm just wondering, is there? I mean, this is calling a witness, really, isn't it? Almost now.
So can I give a view? I think it would be completely inappropriate, frankly, at this session. This isn't a session for submissions or to readdress the planning balance. We heard that evidence last week. Mr. Howell-Williams wants to make points based on what we've heard today. It's for his closing submission, frankly. Because where does this go? Miss Goodyear makes points. Mr. Ross has a right of reply. The third parties must have a say. And suddenly, you know, we've got another hour, 2 hours. It's just not, I haven't come across, frankly, evidence being sought to be given in a Section 106 session on how it affects the planning balance. So I would ask you to reject that. Mr. Howell-Williams wants to make points about the consequences of the outcome of the agreement. He can do it in his closing, and I'll respond accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's. I can see that this Section 106 is being agreed at the moment, but I can't see that we're going. I mean, it's just going to carry on. We're not going to be able to conclude on Friday, are we? If we're not.
Well, I'm not sure I'd agree with that, sir. I suspect all that would be required is probably no more than 5 minutes from Mrs. Goodyear, and then, of course, the opportunity for Mr. Ross to respond if he feels he needs to respond on behalf of the appellant. I honestly can't see there'd be any disadvantage to any party, but more than that, this is in the context of a very recent agreement, literally in the last 24 hours, whereby the appellant has volunteered a process in order to resolve 2 reasons for refusal. The consequences are, well, the consequences have wider implications in terms of the benefits that are and have been claimed in terms of timing and delivery. So I feel that you would be helped. I think that it's right that Mrs. Goodyear should have that short opportunity. Obviously, I appreciate Mr. White's invitation for me to make comment, and of course I will do that, because some of the implications are quite obvious. But you have heard already evidence touching upon timing issues, for example, the need to get permission from the Secretary of State. And now you are being presented with a process whereby it doesn't take much acumen to see that the process could mean a very significant effect on the speed of delivery of the housing that's claimed to meet the 5-year housing land supply shortfall. That's a matter I think you ought to be informed about, sir.
So can I respond? I mean, I don't want to. I mean, it's just remarkable this submission's being made without any notice, frankly. I mean, what am I? If Mr. Howard Williams is seriously contending that, then that needs to be subject to cross-examination. I mean, it's ridiculous that notice wasn't given, that the council would wish to call Miss Goodyear back to comment, because, well, it's just unprecedented, and I'd ask you to reject it. Mr. Howard Williams can make submissions, but if we go down this route, sir, I reserve the right to cross-examine Miss Goodyear. You will then need to hear from Mr. Ross, and of course, Mr. Howard Williams will need to cross-examine Mr. Ross. And we've suddenly got a completely different timetable without notice. We can deal with this by submissions. And if Mr. Howard Williams is going to say that things are going to be significantly delayed because of the agreement, so be it. He's given me notice and I'll deal with it. But I also note this is a completely contradictory position to what the council say in relation to the HLS, and everything's fine somehow in relation to anyway, I won't even begin to get into that, because that articulates exactly my concern, that if we open this door, it will be prolonged and it will take time. Let's deal with this. What we had today programmed was we'll do with the 106. There was no indication till Miss Goodyear popped up that there was any intention for the council to seek to address you on how it affected the planning balance. There was no notice of any kind. And it is, I am amazed that the council out of nowhere suddenly seek to recall a planning witness, readdress the planning balance, and have not given notice to you or me or Mr. Ross or anyone else that that's how they think the process should go. It's remarkable, frankly. And I ask you to reject it wholeheartedly. We can deal with this in submissions.
Right, so I've got Mr. Morgan's got his hand up as well. Mr. Morgan.
Yes, first of all, as to the circumstances of the mechanism that Ms. Humphreys accurately articulated as the structure. It wasn't the applicant that volunteered this, putting it in front of the local planning authority in a last minute effort prior to today. We have both Ms. Humphreys and myself been negotiating the Section 106 with some intensity over the last few weeks, particularly the last two in the lead up to today. And we are very familiar with the potential mechanisms that have been negotiated, moving backwards and forwards in the travelling drafts, also per our discussions. So the proposition that it is a surprise and the timing of what we have ultimately agreed upon merits raising the question about whether a development control mechanism to secure the delivery of benefits in relation to the scheme has a bearing upon the planning balance about delivery of housing, is exactly the same for any Section 106 mechanism that seeks to negatively restrict the occupancy of any tenure of housing, be it market, be it affordable, as a means of ensuring that the social infrastructure and other benefits which are in mitigation of the impact of the scheme are delivered. There's nothing novel about that.
Right. I don't really want to get into this at this stage, but I'm willing to have some comments made between now and as to the council's position on where it stands with this delay that it's saying. And I'm willing for a written submission and a written response by Friday on that, on what the implications are. I don't want to get into calling witnesses again on this. So I'm willing to take a written note from the council as to what it considers the impacts of this are, and allowing for a written response from the appellant. But so I'd like the council's written in writing, the council to provide it by midday tomorrow, so that by the time we resume on Friday, the appellant has got a chance to respond. So I think that's the best way of dealing with this, rather than calling witnesses. Otherwise, we're going to get into a long process, I think. Mr.
So
Howell-Williams.
Well, only to say we'd be content with that. In truth, it would be, of course, possible simply to make submissions on what are essentially matters of fact, but I was offering the opportunity for the parties, the witnesses, to make their comments in order that you should have them should you wish, sir. But if you would like just a short note,
yeah,
we'd be happy to provide that.
Right, Mr. White.
So I think your suggestion's eminently sensible, and I endorse it.
Right, thank you. So like I say, by midday tomorrow, the council could provide a note, and then the appellant to provide one by Friday when we resume, if that's okay on the timetable. So can we get back to the section 106? I know we've gone through the mechanism, and there's certainly going to be a note on that. I think we virtually finished, but I'll just try and go. Oh no, we've got the cemetery contribution. I think that's the.
So yes, we've got service plots to go, cemetery contribution.
Oh, sorry, service plots. Yeah.
Service plots. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the next one, wasn't it? Service plots. Let's try and. Yeah, these are self-build, which is to. I mean, I don't think there's any harm in that condition. Is anyone? So.
No, it's with HOU 6.
Yeah, so it is complying with what's been put into the framework, and also in. So service plots to be provided. So the only other one is this cemetery. I think, unless there's another one, I can't remember.
I think that's correct. Yep.
That's it. So
cemetery contribution, and then there's dispute resolution, which I think is fairly standard. So cemetery contribution is the final one. And that one is the council. Oops, I'm just trying to work out where it is now.
And those calculations are in the Public Green Spaces and Water Environment SPD.
Yeah. Right, so in terms of that, I'm just trying to find the different cemeteries. The contribution necessary to comply with these policies. So public green space, and then it's the SPD says the scheme should contribute that for capital costs and maintenance, which so in terms of that, where would, to say local provision, it doesn't actually say what it will be spent on or anything. So is it, how would that be spent? Is that?
Len, is that one you know a bit more about?
Excuse me. Cemetery maintenance isn't part of the service that I work in, but generally it's towards a contribution for extra cemetery space in the borough. As the borough grows, more space is required. However, I don't think there's a described or a definite project or programme at the moment to acquire extra cemetery or burial space. So it may go towards expansion of existing burial grounds within the Tenterden area or possibly elsewhere, but I'm afraid I don't have detail on what that specifically is at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's whether there's a need for this. Is there a need for it?
I suppose the general need is that as the population in an area grows, excuse me, this morning, sir, that there is a need for more burial space to follow in due course. So it's that sort of gradual build.
There might be
pressure on.
There might already be burial space available, mightn't there?
Yeah.
There's nothing.
That's where I would need to speak to colleagues who look after the burial service. So yeah.
Yeah, there's not enough here to justify it, as far as I can see. So you need, so if you can provide extra information then on that.
I'll collate everything you've asked for. Yep.
Yeah. Because even though it's in the SPD, it's still got to be shown to be necessary to be spent on something that's going to be related.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Anything else on the section 106?
So just, not on the document itself, perhaps, but just on a little bit of housekeeping. I don't know whether it's already been mentioned to you, but with Friday coming and the simple logistics involved in tidying and engrossment of the document so that it can be duly executed by the relevant landowner parties, and then also submitted to the local planning authority for its sealing, which is a mayoral seal, which I understand only takes place on Wednesdays.
Correct.
It does mean that a window of opportunity will be necessary just to deal with those logistics. So,
yeah. Well, I'll deal with that on Friday to see where we are by then. The only other thing I need to, well, as far as I can see, the only other thing I need to look at is the itinerary and where we're going to meet and who's going to be attending for this site visit tomorrow. So I've got the plans for the site visit, and so really we look at this. So the P is parking, is it, on the plan I've got, adjacent to number 1. So we meet at point 1. And I would say at 10 o'clock tomorrow. So any problems with that? So meet at 10 o'clock at point 1 on this plan. And then we'll proceed from there. And I just want to note who's going to attend, really. Who's going to attend from the council? Hello, Mr.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes, so I can speak. I didn't know if we were limited to number of people. We were originally going to have myself attending. David Withycombe was going to attend as well, but because he's had a positive COVID test, he was going to attend. Wendy Fiddler, who's also seen the site, and I was also going to ask Phil Cook, the landscape officer, to attend as well. So we had 3.
Right, I'm not saying. I think if it's useful, then that's. I think because he's certainly Phil Cook, who seems to have given evidence on quite a lot of the trees and that part, and as trees need to be identified, I don't see any harm in that, in him coming, definitely. Right. So for the appellant.
So for the appellant, it will be Mr. Jeremy Smith, who you will recall, if your memory is strong, gave landscape evidence in the first week, and also Mr. Simon Jones, who gave tree evidence on behalf of the appellants. Those will be the 2 representatives of the appellants.
Right. And I don't know whether the third parties are here, the ones who are going to attend.
Yeah. So I can answer that question, and that is Sue Quinton will be representing the third parties. Albert Paul, you may remember, has personal issues revolving around his property. So he will meet you at his property. So he won't be actually doing the walk around. You'll just purely be at his property.
That's a Rose Cottage, isn't it?
Yep. And myself for the council. Tenterden Council, that is.
Yeah, and you're representing Tenterden Council. But Mr. Poole won't accompany us apart from round by his
yeah, he'll just purely discuss with you the bits he wants to point out.
Well, it's not to discuss, it's
not
just
to discuss, or
rephrase
that, point out the features.
Yes, it's not to discuss anything.
No, I do understand that. I do understand.
Right, so so if we can meet at 10 o'clock at point 1 on this plan, which is Appledore Road, isn't it? So we'll, and that's by the footpath AB12. So it's I'm assuming. So right, anything else anyone wants to do before I adjourn until Friday? Anything anyone wants to raise? So we're going to resume at 9:30 on Friday, the 25th. So and hopefully there'll be a few more questions answered by then, and then there'll be the chance for closings as well from the council and the appellant. Right, so the inquiries